everyone. It's so nice to see you all again virtually. You're on Music and Chat with Shirley Ong, and it's a good evening from me to you in Nashville, Tennessee. We had daylight savings last weekend, so I've gained an hour. Have you? Let us know. Anyway, please say hi in the live chat and let us know where you're tuning in from and what time it is wherever you are. Don't be backward and coming forward. Come say hi. Oh, and remember, if you have any questions, please put them in the live chat as well so that I may attend to them as the stream moves along. I'd like to thank our new subscribers to my YouTube channel as well. You guys, much appreciated. And don't forget to select notification. It's that bell that you click. And you would be alerted to whenever I release a video, make a post, or have a live stream. And the way the live streams are scheduled, if I have guests from different parts of the world, I will try and schedule the time to fit them a little bit better, which means you guys will have to move around to fit in with them. And so it should be. I released a new music video last Tuesday. It's called The Universe. I'm not sure if you've seen it yet. If you haven't, please go check it out. It's of course on my YouTube channel. So, any friends here this evening? It's 4:33 in Nashville where I am. And it will be 10:33 where our guest is. Those of you who are in the UK. It's 6:33 a.m. on Sunday in Singapore and 9:33 a.m. in Australia Eastern Time, which encompasses New South Wales, Victoria, Queensland, and so on and so forth. Before I get started with our guest, I have something nice I want to play for you. It's a piece called Calor or Calor. My Spanish is not very good, but it's spelled C-A-L-O-R and it means heat. Not caliente as in spicy, but heat, temperature, heat. And I was inspired watching some flamenco on TV in Singapore. And when I was in Fort Wayne, Indiana, I decided to record me or video record me recording it, if you know what I mean, tracking. And it's a movement from this large concerto I've been talking about, where I've been composing movement at a time. So this piece is called Calor. Let me just turn on my theremin cam so that you can see me play. that was Scarlet. Hot and spicy. No, it's just hot. Temperature hot. I want to say hi from Shihui. Hi, Shihui. She's from Singapore. Good vibes to you too. Thanks so much for dropping by. Who else is there? Anybody? I'm listening. Okay, a little history for you people here gathered today to bombard Lee Stringer with questions. So we've come a long way from CRT TVs to organic light emitting displays, diode displays. And we have streaming movies as the new gold. Supposed to make us a lot of money, not us. Some other people, maybe. When we last spoke to our good friend Philip Nelson, we exposed the nascent computer animation industry in the 80s and how the Commodore Amiga with new tech and Lightwave 3D paved the way for us with aspirations but shallow pockets to be CG artists. Our guest today, Lee Stringer, was caught red-handed in this timeline. From the UK to LA, he tracked his way into VFX magic and got to work on some iconic movie projects. So before we call him in, I just want to say hi again to Shihui. She said, what a wonderful sounding instrument. Yes, indeed, the theremin has a beautiful voice. Makes up for my not so nice voice. So, okay, without further ado, because time is a ticking, let's call in our special guest, Lee Stringer. Lee, we're calling you. Hey, Lee. We can see you.
Uh-oh.
And we can hear you.
Uh-oh. Okay, testing 1, 2. Can you hear me now?
Yes. I'm just making sure you are right smack center in your frame. So everyone, say hi to Lee.
Hello. Hello. I think I hear a cat howling in the background or somebody saying hello. Yes.
Oh, that was some applause. Did that sound like cats howling?
I'm a long way away.
You have a vivid imagination, but that's a good thing.
Yes. And I like cats, so yes.
So, Lee, I want to show everyone your showreel clip to begin with.
Uh-oh. Okay.
So here we go.
You don't have to show the whole thing. You can just, abbreviate it. It's okay.
I'll show the whole thing. But everyone, I won't so much have the volume up just for licensing issues. So here we go. Here's Lee's showreel clip. At least one of plenty, I'm sure.
So you should be playing your... You can unmute me.
Okay, I've unmuted Lee. because he wants to
Hello.
talk over his showreel.
No, I just don't want people to fall asleep, so I keep them awake. So, yes.
So now we have a plane. Oh no, now we have a spaceship.
Yeah, that's pretty much my reel. Spaceship plane.
Now we have the cube. Oh, now it's the USS Enterprise. It's Star Trek.
Yes, it is.
Now,
yep. And the cube would have been the Borg. So,
that's right.
Yes, blowing up the Borg.
And now we have a Statue of Liberty being blown up.
Oh yeah, that was from Iron Sky. So that's when the Nazis invade New York City. So.
I actually watched the whole thing, but I don't remember the Statue of Liberty being blown up. Uh-oh. Now we have
okay. We know when they arrive in New York and fly overhead. So
yes. I think we saw a short bit of the Clone Wars.
Oh no, that would have been from a project I did before. That was actually when I was teaching. I was teaching at a school in Florida. And we did a little Star Wars project with the students. There's a story behind that, but we'll save that one for another day.
Okay, well, Lee and I are back on. I wanted to finish watching the showreel, everyone. I hope it was okay with you. So, but before we continue, I want to say hi to a friend of ours. Daniel Katzenberger is here as well.
Oh, Dan, yes. Okay, yes. Okay, yes. Hi, Dan.
Hi, Daniel. Nurnie. The last time Philip was here,
yes,
he made us drink to Nurnies, which I was going to bring up anyway, but Daniel beat me to it.
We can talk about Nurnies for sure. Yes. So.
Okay, so Lee, I'm sorry, I got a little distracted. You were a wee little lad. Actually, you weren't that little. You were in high school, I think. You told me when you're watching Gerry Anderson's Thunderbirds.
No, I was a wee little lad.
You were.
And that's why actually I'm drinking my coffee this evening at almost 11 o'clock, just so I can be awake for this.
Very good.
And so I got I specifically had this so you can see. So yeah, actually I was about 6.
I wonder how old most of us were. So, because there are some fans of Thunderbirds ago here, including me. And I do have a picture just because I did some research and I want to see the brothers again.
The Tracy brothers.
So, yeah, there are 5 of them. There are only 3. And I think this is Virgil's vertical takeoff and landing craft, right? Am I right?
Well, the thing is, I can't see what you're seeing, so I'm not sure.
Oh, you see in a second, I hope. It's a P.
That's Virgil. That's in the cockpit of Thunderbird 2, which is this one, Thunderbird 2. So Thunderbird 2 was, that was the second. That was the heavy lifter. That was the big green one, and it's kind of like everybody's favorite because it was multi-purpose and multi-utility, and it could change it could change the pods, And it wasn't necessarily the fastest or the sleekest or the whatever, but it was sort of utilitarian. And everybody liked Thunderbird 2.
That was my favorite. I have another picture of the brothers. Only 4 of them, unfortunately. But I do have I found this one. Somehow, somewhere, someone decided to put this up and say, who is the hottest Tracy brother?
Don't ask me. So, well, the thing to remember about the Tracy brothers, the names, and don't ask me to recite the names. I will probably mess them up. It's like naming the 7 dwarfs. But they're named after the Mercury 7 astronauts from from the space program. So that's where the names all come from.
I did not know that.
Yeah, go. So there you go. Yeah, there's yes. So yeah, if you look up the original 7. They use the names of the astronauts for the Thunderbirds. Yeah.
What do you know? I have a very profound moment. Usually when I have a profound moment, there's silence. You don't hear anything from me. But since this is a live stream and I have to host, I can't have too long a profound moment. Except to ask you, how did Gerry Anderson's work impress upon you to dream of working in visual effects?
I don't think it did initially, because I like to tell everybody I was a normal kid up until I saw Thunderbirds, and I tell everybody that the thing is that it sort of opened up to like a new world, a new universe, an alternate thing, which I wasn't, and I may not be the best thing to say, but they blew things up. There was all these huge explosions, and there were spaceships, and there was rockets, and there was disaster, and there was drama, and all this, and they blew things up all the time. And so, I just, as a 6-year-old, you're like, wow, this is interesting. So I think it more impacted me on going somewhere else, or being in a different sort of, I don't say a different universe, because it's meant to be ours in the future, but sort of a different timeline, as it were. Because when you're 5 or 6, I mean, you only know about your world around you and what you're seeing, and then when you start to, I never was a big book reader. I was more visual. I was always more visual. So you start to see TV shows, you start to see movies and things like this, and suddenly you're, I mean, I saw my first James Bond film probably around the same time,
Wow.
and I was, well, what's all this, So, and it's probably around the same time that I remember seeing, the first Disney movie or whatever I saw. So it was more about opening up my eyes and sort of going, oh, wow, there's all these other things out there. And it was just one of those moments. And then shortly after that, I was also introduced to another of his shows, which was Space 1999. And that was another one of those, wow, other places, other times, other, sort of, and again, it sort of opened it up. And then like everybody in my age, in the 70s, Star Wars came along. And again, that, your brain's just being overloaded by all this sort of visual stuff. The thing I always tell everybody was before Star Wars actually came out, I think, because you have to remember that back in the old days, there was reels of film. And so Star Wars didn't actually open in England, where I was, where I grew up, until almost a year after it opened in the US. So it was actually early 1978 when I actually saw Star Wars. So we had all this sort of 6, 8 months, 9 months of sort of, I don't want to say media, because there wasn't a lot of that at that time like you do now, but you had sort of magazines, and you had newspapers, and you had TV shows, and they were talking about this film that was doing huge numbers over. I remember that very much. And I don't remember exactly when, but I remember there was a making of Star Wars. There was a making of. And I remember seeing that. And that was the first time that I recall sort of learning about how things like this were made. There was behind the scenes footage, and there was stuff showing, the actors on set and the robots being made and all this sort of stuff. And then there was a whole thing on the spaceships and with a blue screen and with cameras and the motion control rigs moving around. And as a kid, again, you're absorbing stuff at a crazy rate when you're that sort of age. And I was sort of mesmerized. And, at that time I was already a kid, I was already building model kits, buying Airfix model kits, and putting them together. And then at that point, after that, I kind of started to, put model kits together in a different order, because one of the things I learned is that, the way they make spaceships, you take the wings off of this, and you take the body off of that, and you stick them together, and then you paint it a different color, and you put some decals on it, and it becomes a spaceship. And I suddenly was like, oh, I can take a tank and I can stick some wings on it and paint it a different color, and suddenly it becomes a little spaceship, in my head, And around this, well, I already had Legos at that time, sorry, not Legos, Lego. I will correct, because the plural for Lego is Lego.
Got it.
So, and the good thing with that is that you could put them together and build something. So I started to build spaceships and stuff like that. And I think, as I recall, I had built some spaceships before that kind of period, but not too much. I think I tried to make like the ships from Space 1999 or something, and I didn't have enough bricks to make it look anywhere, but in my head it kind of did.
Yeah.
So I think it was that making of that really kind of clicked, and and then there was that whole period right after them when so many films were coming out that were in that same sort of vein, because everybody was trying to cash in on that, and obviously I was just absorbing that sort of stuff into the 80s when I was growing up. Yeah.
So, how did you end up working on Cartoon Network Space Ghost Coaster Coaster? Hold on, don't say anything. I want to show some pickies.
You can show pictures. Don't show the video because kind of yeah. But you can
I
show the
will
pictures.
show the video though. Here's a picture of Lee.
So this was actually okay. Fast forward, leaving high school, whatever. I wanted to sort of work in films, but in the UK in the late '80s, it was kind of going through a bit of a slow period. Yep, there I am. So sorry, I'm looking at the YouTube feed over there, but it's a little bit delayed from where I am here. So, I wanted to, I moved to the States in the early '90s, and there was certainly a period, there was a period in there where I'm like, I really want to learn how to do this, and I really wanted to, and I wanted to build miniatures or whatever. And I did do small stuff for like local films and some commercials and stuff. And I was living on the East Coast of the US, and I'll be honest, I didn't want to move to the West Coast. I liked Los Angeles. I liked visiting Los Angeles. I wasn't sure if I could live there, but a friend of mine, Ralis Khan, he's a makeup guy. He had moved out to Los Angeles and was working at a guy called Screaming Mad George, who's a very famous makeup artist out there. And he was like, hey, we need to build this miniature. Do you want to come out and build a miniature for this Space Ghost project? So this was actually my first sort of real project in Los Angeles. I'd done small stuff before. And so I ended up going out to LA and slept on his couch. And we went to work quite, every day, as it were, and there was me and a small team of us. We built this miniature. And what it was being done for two guys called Jim and Joel Hodgson, who did a thing called Mystery Science Theater 3000, and they wanted this Mystery Science Theater 3000 kind of style opening. They were going to do a new opening for Space Ghost, and so it was meant to have this sort of cheesy MST3K sort of animated things flying in and just sort of goofy things going on. So we had to build this miniature in that sort of it wasn't meant to look realistic or anything. It was meant to have a very much a homemade kind of look to it. So we built this huge miniature, and we had a stage, and we filmed it all. And I believe it was never actually used. I don't know why, but it was on one of the DVDs or something as a bonus thing.
I'm going to show a quick clip. It's a low-res clip. But after that, I'll show you a picture of the actual models. So here's the clip.
Right. Talk over it if it's playing. I can't see if it's playing, so you'll have to tell me. But basically, what it was meant to be it was called the Space Ghost Coaster Coaster, and it was meant to be like a roller coaster or a ride or something. It was meant to be that Space Ghost had built something to get to his studio. So we built a miniature of his studio. We built this kind of space environment, and it was all meant to be very cartoony and a little bit cheesy. And he was meant to journey in his cruiser to his studio, and so this was like a ride. And there was like things going on. As I say, MST3K had this opening where there was things going in front of the screen and all the rest. And there's one bit where there's like a balloon that comes across with a piece of green screen on it, and they were going to insert like the guest of the episode or something was going to get inserted there. And then we kind of go inside the spaceship, and we meant to go up an elevator into his studio. And that's sort of what it was. So
I've got another couple of pictures. Here's some more stuff. I think planets.
Planets, yeah, we built lots of planets. So
and then one with the actual roller coaster.
Oh, the square sort of boxy thing. Yeah, we and there was like a sign that opened up and stuff like this. So yeah, this was all the miniatures after we were done. So it was a very fun experience. The thing is that by then I was already learning CGI. I wasn't doing a lot with it at that point because I still hadn't sort of got to that point where I was happy with it. And so as I say, I'd done some miniatures. I had done some CGI actually before that, but not a lot. Nothing big time. And but it would only be less than a year after this that I kind of got hired to move out to LA. And so
speaking of LA, I want to say hello to a friend, Captain Bob. He says, "Hi Lee, great to see you online." He's from Palmdale, California. Hi, Captain Bob.
I know Palm. Well, I mean, I ended up living not Palmdale. I was in Santa Clarita, but Palmdale was sort of the next place over the hill. And I liked going over there because that's where Edwards Air Force Base is. So we went over there a few times in that direction. Saw the space shuttle land there, and went to two of the SpaceX. Not SpaceX. The Burt Rutan's launch of the Spaceship One. Sorry, wrong space program. So yeah, no, I mean, Palmdale's cool because that's where they build all these. They build a lot of this stuff. That's where the space shuttles were built, in Palmdale. So
got it. I want to show a quick summary screen capture of some of your model work from your Flickr site.
Oh well, this is my yeah. So the short version of this is that I wanted to build models and miniatures for movies, but things moved into CGI, and so I moved into CGI. And I can talk over this while you show the pictures. You have to tell me which pictures you're showing.
Oh, it's a screen capture of your folder, so it's got the Millennium Falcon, Buck Rogers, the TIE Fighter, Rogue One,
X-Wing, yeah.
Empire Strikes Back. Yes.
What it was, when I started working in CG, after not long, I kind of was like, the thing with CGI is that it's in the computer, it's on a screen, and the only things you do with your hands is your mouse and your keyboard and stuff. And so I kind of got an inkling to sort of start building miniatures again just for fun. And that's kind of what I do now. That's now become my hobby. There's not an awful lot of miniatures being used for visual effects, but the two of the projects that I worked on last year, we did build miniatures for both of those, and I didn't send you photos of that, so you won't be able to show them, but we'll figure that out another time. So, no. So I now, my hobby when I'm not working or whatever, is to build miniatures, replicas of the ones that were the stuff that influenced me. Basically, it's the stuff that inspired me as a kid, whether it was from Star Wars or Star Trek or Battlestar, the original Battlestar Galactica, the Buck Rogers. Silent Running, 2001: A Space Odyssey, or whatever it is. So, the thing with the miniatures from a lot of those movies and TV shows is actually most of them have gone. They got blown up, or they got thrown in the trash, or nobody cared about them. A lot of them were never saved. And the ones that were saved are worth hundreds of thousands of dollars now. And so unfortunately, I don't make enough to buy one of those at auction if it does come up. So, there's a small community around the world that builds these replicas that are replicas of the miniatures.
Got it.
So that's what I do for fun.
That's great. So I want to take the next step into another chapter. And here's a picture of Ron Thornton, who was a British-born cinematographer who worked on miniatures and motion control on Doctor Who in the 80s, I think it was, right? And he's considered a father of CG and VFX as well, and co-founder of the company Foundation Imaging, which you ended up working with.
Yeah, so in the early 90s when things were really moving. I mean, the 80s, CGI was sort of starting to come along, but it was very, very limited. And I was still in high school, and you had to have a Cray supercomputer or whatever. And then when it moved into the 90s, there was two sort of avenues, and I always used the early 90s as that sort of branching. You had essentially the ILM type of people who had the resources to buy a few very high-end machines and some very high-end software and write custom software that they and of course they produced there was other projects that became, some of them became Pixar, some of them became Industrial Light and Magic Digital. But of course, the one everybody, the pivotal one was Jurassic Park. That's when everybody went, wow, So that was around 93. And that was an interesting time because I remember when Jurassic Park came out, I'm kind of going, well, that's it. Models and miniatures are over. Everything's going in CGI. And then the funny thing is the same year was when Nightmare Before Christmas came out, which was all stop motion and all, miniatures and whatever. So the Jurassic Park and Nightmare Before Christmas came out the same year. So you get Jurassic Park come out and you go, okay, that's it.
So that was Tim Burton Nightmare
Tim
Before.
Burton.
Oh,
Yeah, that
really?
was his.
Well,
Yeah, so that came out the same year. So, there's this one hand you're kind of going,
okay.
okay, well, CGI has completely eliminated all of this stop motion and all this traditional stuff. And then the same year, one of the most pivotal, of the modern era, stop motion miniature kind of films came out the same year,
Well, yes.
So,
Coincidentally,
yeah.
our guest next week
Ah,
did the music for that album, for the soundtrack,
oh, wow.
for that
Okay, brilliant.
movie.
Okay, well then I'll be tuning in for that because
Wow.
it's it's
All
a
right.
favorite.
So,
And so around the same time, you had Ron and
yeah.
Paul who were basically they set up a company called Foundation Imaging because CGI was sort of the new thing. Ron kind of knew that it was, but
Mm.
he was approached to work on a project called Babylon 5,
Mm-hmm.
and they didn't have millions and tens, twenties, hundreds of millions of dollars, whatever it is that Jurassic Park had.
Mm-hmm.
And originally they were going to do it with miniatures, and Ron said, "Well, let me try doing some demos, for what we can perhaps do with this thing called the Video Toaster, which was the Commodore Amiga had this plug-in card that essentially kind of gave you like a mini TV studio in a box, and effectively for well, I guess the equivalent probably at that time of about $5,000, you could build a Commodore Amiga, which with a video toaster, with a monitor, and it had some 3D software in there. And so they took that, and that 3D software that came with it was actually, I think, originally designed just to do like flying logos or like text and stuff like this.
Yeah.
It wasn't designed to do spaceships and stuff, but people like Ron kind of looked at it and went, "Hey, I think we can do more than this," and they did.
Yeah.
So you've effectively, the stuff that ILM was using was effectively two or three hundred thousand for one machine with one piece of software,
Mm.
and you got the toaster, which was about 4 to 5 thousand. So obviously the difference was massive, and I didn't have 2 or 300 thousand to spend to learn how to use this machine, and I wasn't at a college or a university that had one, so but I had an Amiga, so obviously I'm like, hey, I want to gravitate towards that direction. So I remember seeing magazine articles and stuff written by Ron or written by Mojo, who was like their first employee. And I was like, this is possible. I think I could do this. This is at least a direction. I think at least it was plausible. You looked at the other stuff and you're going, well, I don't even know how to get close to there. It turns out that everybody else was doing the same sort of thing, and anybody on the West Coast or whatever just went and knocked on the door and said, "Hey, how do I learn this?" And they gave you some tips and whatever. But I wasn't. So so I sort of aimed a focus there, and I ended up meeting Mojo, who was worked on that at a sci-fi convention in Maryland. Because he was a fan who got a job. And then I was a fan who ended up getting a job, but I was one of those ones who was like, hey, I want to learn what you do. How do I learn what you do? Tell me, And he gave me his card and was, probably like, yeah, whatever, get out of here, come and see me when you got something. And eventually I did. I did. I met up with him another time, and then eventually I got to the point where, sort of late 98. I had self-learned using a book by Dan Ablin. It was called Inside Lightwave. So anybody, there was the Lightwave Power Guide, I think it was called, and it was literally like a book on how to do stuff. There was no internet really. There was no there was a little bit, but really you had to just find a book and learn and do a tutorial, and that's what I did. So eventually I spent almost a year really hardcore, like just learning this sort of stuff. And I ended up sending Mojo basically an image. And I kind of just said, look, am I going in the right direction? And short version was I ended up getting a job offer to go work at Foundation by the end of the day.
Wow.
And I was like shell-shocked.
That's wonderful.
Completely shell-shocked, and I didn't really know what to do, and ended up moving to California, and now I still work with Mojo. I still work with him.
Nice.
The project that I'm currently working on, I'm working with him on that. So
wow. Speaking of LA, I want to say hello to another of our guests, Domi. Domi? Not sure how to
Domi.
say your name properly. Is it Domi or Domi? I think it's Domi. It looks like a Domi, but please correct me if I'm wrong. Greetings as well.
Has anybody got any questions so far? So
Any questions
yeah.
so far? I wanted to
Yeah, if
say,
you ask
Lee.
questions, you can just you can
Oh yeah, I'll
drag me off.
see it. Yeah, I was gonna say, Lee. I was one of those guilty parties who went out and got myself an Amiga 2000 as well. But I
Right.
used Sculpt Animate. I never
Yep.
got to Lightwave, but at least I got started. It didn't take me very far because, work got in the way. Eventually, I got employed to do multimedia, which was a lot more administrative stuff than I wanted to do. And eventually, music took over.
Right. Right. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I
Well,
do
you were
have
in the
fond
music.
memories. Domi
Yeah.
says Lee knows me, so
Okay. I gotta look at the picture. Okay.
Domi.
Okay. Unfortunately, I'm looking over on the YouTube video over here, but the picture's really, really small. So
Oh,
okay. Remind me. Remind me.
okay, I'll remind you.
Oh.
Hi, Domi.
Okay. Question. Where do you see the industry in 20 years?
Oh, hold on. I have not seen that one. I'll bring that in now. If you want to
Okay. Then
answer
you
it,
ask.
I'll bring it in now. Question: where do you see the industry in 20 years?
Hopefully from retirement. I don't know. No, I'll never be retired. God, I really don't know. Things are changing right now. There's a big shift, obviously, right now, with everything going online. And I mean, that's not been an immediate shift, but it's been a big shift.
Yeah.
We're in many ways, we're actually, if it hadn't been for this whole COVID thing, the industry was really heading into a boom area last year, especially because suddenly we now have a lot of new content providers who need content. So there's a lot of new productions that we're ramping up and all the rest. I mean, so
Yeah.
before you had film and television for whatever, and now suddenly you've got Netflix and Hulu and Amazon Prime and Apple and everybody else who said, hey, we need content as well.
Yeah.
And some of that content is coming from the traditional side. So, you know, more channels, more people requires more content. So, I don't think anything. I mean, things are not slowing down. I think in the entertainment field, they're actually picking up more. And now, today, I don't know how many tens or hundreds of thousands of people are involved just in visual effects. In visual effects, there's tens and tens of thousands of people, and a lot of people are like, well. I've had people ask me, is this, what are these people doing? And I go, well, you have to remember that, 30 years ago, a movie that had 200 visual effects was a blockbuster, was a big budget blockbuster that had 200 effects. Now, a blockbuster movie has 2,000 effects in it, and they're much higher resolution and much more detailed than they were before. So there's a lot more work required for that. And even you pick any movie that has no visual effects in it, there'll still be 200 visual effects in there that you just won't even know. So there's a lot of effects I've done a lot with, I don't want to say digital makeup, going in and fixing. And nowadays there's a lot of work for just, somebody goes, oh, I don't like the color of the sky, or can we put a cloud in there, or these two shots, the sky doesn't match, or we can see, some company's logo in the background. Can we remove that? Or, as I say, can we change the color of this? Or can we fix their eyes? Or can we? There's so many of these things, that there's going to be a lot of work for that. So anyway, where's the industry going to be in 20 years? God, that's a pretty hard one right now. I'll be honest, I don't see anything radically changing. Like suddenly we're going to have bionic implants, or we're going to have, I'd love to have, Ready Player One type of VR environments, but I don't think in 20 years we're going to even, we'll be there. VR, I mean, I played around with VR back in the late 80s. And
yeah, me too. Early 90s. I saw.
Maybe it's early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. I mean, there was VR was going to be the next big thing, and it's certainly now we certainly have the graphics cards and the technology and the speed and whatever to make something, the new stuff, the new Oculus and whatever, and I mean, I just saw somebody show a picture the other day. The Oculus is for sale in Walmart in the US, and I mean, I'm like, it's not a specialty weird geek thing anymore. It's sort of in the mainstream, and so I've got some friends who are working on various VR projects, so we'll see where VR. I mean, I know that there's been people who've been trying to work on doing VR movies, which obviously require a lot of VFX. I think there's going to be a lot of experimentation, but as far as the next 20 years, I'm not expecting some mind-blowing sudden change or whatever. I think we're just going to keep going on the current trajectory. I think we'll have obviously traditional ways of distributing. I think that's obviously the biggest change that's happening right now. And a lot of people now are saying, is cinema over? Are we going to just go direct to home, cinema, as it were? I don't know. I kind of hope not. I mean, everybody's got a big screen TV at home now, pretty much, because they're so cheap. But you still like to go out and watch a movie on a big screen, but you need I don't watch as many as I probably used to, or, I know a lot of people who watch a lot more than I do, but if there's a reason to have a spectacular kind of movie, like for me last year was 1917, that to me was a film that just, you needed to watch it on a cinema screen, and it has, 1917 is a great example for me, and that's why it won the VFX, Oscar. Most of the VFX in that, you just didn't even know that it was there, and that's great. I like that sort of stuff. So,
what do you think of AR movies? Do you think we would head towards that type of?
AR is another one. AR, augmented reality. So anybody doesn't know. That's where you're looking at something maybe on your cell phone and you're looking through the camera and then something is put on top of that. There's stuff AR with VR goggles. So you're seeing a table or something and then there's something on top. That's what I'm saying. The technology is at the point where there's some interesting possibilities and developments and stuff like that. So, I don't know, the biggest thing is just to keep up with, and to keep an eye on what's going on. Obviously, right now the big thing is virtual production, which is instead of using green screen, we're using these LED walls. And I haven't worked on a show that is using that right now. I've got several that keep talking to me about, building one and setting it up and stuff like that. And obviously, they're popping up now in the US and in Canada and stuff like that. So that's a new change. It's not, it's actually been happening for the last 5 or 10 years, but it just reached that point where it becomes doable. And then the whole COVID thing has suddenly kind of pushed virtual production into the spotlight, as it were, because they're going, well, look, you don't have to travel to Paris, or you don't have to travel to a location, or you don't have to travel to the middle of Manhattan to film Manhattan. You can actually make it either a digital version or you can put a projection on the back. So it's a way to sort of skip over green screen. But the thing is that it's not a lot of people think it's a magic bullet that fixes a lot of things. It doesn't.
I was going to say, how convincing does it look to have LED?
Well, it looks very convincing. Yeah, it looks very convincing.
It does.
But as I say, it's not a magic bullet. It doesn't. They can do behind the scenes, going, hey, look, we can do this, but there's still technological limitations to it. It's the same, but as long as you work within them, it's the same as having AR, augmented reality, or virtual reality. There's still limits, there's still restrictions, there's still kind of things that you've got to make sure that you just have to adapt that technology to fit within. So the way I look at it, it's the same as anything else. It's the same with miniatures. It's the same with CGI, whatever it is. It's another tool that we can put into the toolkit. And it's not something that replaces everything. It doesn't replace green screen, but it's another thing that we can add to our toolkit.
Well,
that's how I look at it.
Domi is a friend of yours, Dominic from Germany, he said. And he
Oh,
has
it's Dominic from Germany. Okay, hi Dom. Sorry, you put Dommy. I was like,
yeah, he goes by
I couldn't.
Domi. But now we
Okay,
know.
okay, hi
Hi,
Dom.
Dominic. He said his question really was about the direction of Unreal Engine used as a digital life backdrop, like in The Mandalorian,
Well, and that's what we're
which is
talking
what you're
about
talking
vertical
about. Yeah,
production when we're talking
yeah. Well,
about
I didn't
yeah.
realize The
You
Mandalorian
know,
used that LED walls and
yeah.
filming.
Well, the Mandalorian is the one that's kind of getting all the press about it, and
Oh,
because
okay.
they're using it, suddenly everybody's like, oh, we want to use that.
Okay.
Um, the thing that they don't tell everybody is that the Mandalorian's got a budget of like 10 or 15 million per episode, which
Sheesh.
is a lot of money, and so they have the money to build. These the LED wall. I mean, you can spend $1 million on just the hardware without even blinking.
Yeah.
So they've got the resources, but it looks really good. It does look really good. So yeah, I mean, Unreal is suddenly become I don't want to say a game changer, but again, it's another tool that goes in the toolbox, and it's suddenly reached the point where it's very, very powerful. And the great thing about Unreal is that it's free, and they are literally and that's suddenly everybody's and the quality is it's suddenly in the last few years it's made leaps and bounds. The video games have always been impressive. I mean, even 20 years ago, I remember seeing stuff 20 years ago going, oh, we need to keep moving forward because they're catching up with us, and they're doing it in real time and we're still rendering it,
Yeah.
And that GPU technology has taken, especially in the last few years, has taken some really serious jumps. And now, obviously, it's just mind blowing what you can do in Unreal in real time or near real time. And so yeah, it's another tool in the toolbox. It's a very, very powerful tool, and it's definitely getting a lot of attention. Where's it going to lead to? That's the big, that is the question. I don't know. Yeah,
So
but it gives
eventually,
us.
sorry, Lee, go on.
No. I was just going to say it gives us a very powerful new tool. I hope it just allows people to explore what they can do with it. That's really what it comes down to.
I was gonna say, eventually it'll be hard pressed for someone to be able to discern what is a wall of LEDs from what is a miniature or a model, what is CG, and
Yeah.
because it's done so well. Well, I watched the first season of The Mandalorian, and I wouldn't have known any better.
Right. Right.
But I wasn't looking for the discrepancy. I was just
Right.
enjoying it, and I enjoyed it.
Well, that's really that's the best way for any visual effects to be done. I mean, we know that this 20-foot tall creature is not real, but you shouldn't be looking for it. The whole point. I mean, and that's part of the. I don't want to say the frustration, but you get a lot of times where a movie or a TV show is not very good, and then they blame other things. Oh well, the costumes weren't very good, or the makeup wasn't very good. Oh, the visual, that looks like computer generated. Oh, it looks crap. And what it really boils down to, though, and this is what I was saying about with Unreal and these other tools that we can use, it really comes down to it's a collaborative process where we're working with the filmmakers, we're working with the writers, we're working with the directors and the producers and everybody. And you know what? It's all about bringing all the pieces together, whether it's the actors or the music or the whatever, So one of the things that I'm hoping that some of, where's filmmaking going to go in 20 years? I don't know, but we shouldn't be just looking at that. We should be going, well, what can we do with this technology? Can we tell stories differently? How, can we tell stories with a VR headset on our face? Can we tell a story that way? Or is it got to be a video game? Or what is it what are we doing with augmented, what are we doing with these big screen TVs that have really high is there other ways that we can? So that's I think one of the things that isn't getting talked about is when it all boils down to it, it's storytelling, and maybe we can do some. Can we tell stories differently by having a different way to feed them to the person? You know, it's the same as when films first came along, and suddenly they were like, oh, we can show. Or then first TV came along, and suddenly we can just take this entertainment to people in a different way. The reality is, it's all entertainment. It's all to either pass the time or take people on an adventure to go somewhere. And there's different ways to take people on those adventures. So it's a collaborative between, and we're just part of it. We're just part of that visual process. Yeah.
I definitely learn much better watching or listening to someone or a story of sorts. I like reading, but I have noticed I pick things up much faster if I'm viewing it.
Well, that was me as a kid. I hated reading books. I was not a book reader. My English is terrible. I'm English, but my written and writing and reading and writing and stuff it's still pretty bad. But because I grew up, I was the video kid. I was Mike. I wasn't Mike TV from Willy Wonka, but I was that whole thing where I'm like, I have TV. Why do I want to read a book? I can watch this on TV, or I can watch it as a movie, or and then eventually it became, well, now I can get the video cassette and I can watch whatever. Now it's video on demand. It's like but the weird thing is as I've got older, I actually read more books than I did when I was a kid, way more, because you can, your imagination can kind of take over and go places. So and I do like, and I know there's a lot of book readers who are against like making movies or making TV shows of books. So there are people, and I'm actually fascinated in how stories are then translated to become visual, because it's sort of like is how I imagined it, how somebody else imagined it. So and next year is going to be. It was going to be this year, but it's going to be next year. There's the Denis Villeneuve's Dune, which is coming out, which is a book that's very visual and very thick and very large and very long, and it's being translated again. This is the third or fourth time that somebody's tried to translate Dune to the big screen, and it's a difficult process. So, but I'm very encouraged. I've got nothing to do with it, but I'm very encouraged in seeing what's going to come of that. So
I saw a short trailer. Dune, you mean, right?
Yes.
I saw a short trailer recently. I'm quite fascinated as well to see how that's going to turn out. So I have a couple of quick questions about your work with Foundation Imaging. Of course, you ended up working on Robert Weiss's Star Trek, the motion picture director's edition. So before you answer, I just want to show everybody a quick pic of Robert Weiss. He actually won Academy Awards of all films, musicals, West Side Story and Sound of Music. Both are my favorites. I don't know. I just love them for different reasons, because they're quite different flavors, even though they're both musicals. But so here's a picture of Robert Weiss. Yes. And
he had an amazing career, and I was very glad to actually get to meet him, and I say we've worked with him. A little bit, but he basically told us what he wanted and whatever. He was quite aged, when we got to work with him. So he started off as an editor on Citizen Kane.
Oh.
So, that's he's been around. And the weird thing is he directed one of what I still consider one of the best sci-fi movies, which was The Day the Earth Stood Still.
Oh, one of my favorites, because it's got theremin on it.
It's got the theremin, yes. So, The Day the Earth Stood Still.
I didn't know he directed that one. He did?
Yeah, so it's weird. So he directed that. He directed Star Trek, the motion picture. And then he directed West Side Story and The Sound of Music. You're kind of going, wait a minute, what's...
He's my kind of guy.
So, so that was...
So let me show everyone a picky of the box cover of the director's edition. It went to DVD, right?
It went to DVD. This was done in 2000. Actually, when it went to DVD, we already were kind of going, well, should we do this in high def? Should we do this in high def? Because high def's coming along. It's going to be, you know. And what it was, Paramount was, well, they were resistant to do any more than they were contractually obliged to actually do. So we only did it on DVD. And we have been campaigning actually to do a 4K redo of the director's edition.
Yeah,
so,
I found a little blurb about it, so I took a quick snapshot, as you can see.
Okay, yeah. So hopefully, and the weird thing is actually that, Darren Dockerman, who was the visual effects supervisor for the special edition, he's actually been in contact with us and kind of get, you know, would you redo this if you could? You know, but like pretty much everybody is just like, of course, you know, we always wanted to do it in high def. So
thanks to Lee, we've got Darren for our third guest this month.
Darren so he'll be able to tell you all about the motion picture and many other projects. That he's worked on more projects than I can count. So yes.
Well, how far can you count?
Yes, exactly. I'd have to look at his. Yes.
I was just messing. Just kidding.
But the motion picture. The interesting thing about the motion picture was that we were creating CGI versions of the Enterprise and the environments and the ships, and we had to integrate them with the original, you know, miniature footage. So we actually had the original miniatures were brought over to Foundation Imaging, which is where I was now working, and we had the original miniatures there, and so you know, myself and Rob Bonchoon were basically we built the digital version of the Enterprise, and you know, it's a bit mind-blowing to actually kind of just walk out the back and there is the original 10-foot miniature, you know, sitting there with a cover over it.
Where do you begin?
I know, and so you're kind of
how do you usually begin if you have to replicate something in CG? Do you say, okay, I guess I'll start from the front, or I'll start from the back?
Yeah, well, as I say, the great thing about that was that we had the miniature there. So I literally began by looking at it, taking photos of it, measuring it, you know. Yeah, I mean, it was there. It was that was kind of easier in many ways because it was right there. I mean, I could literally just walk out the back and there it was. So
was its design fairly symmetrical? So you could say, well, you know, I'll just create one half and then flip it over.
I mean, the Enterprise is that's actually one of its brilliance in a way, is that it is a fairly simplistic. I mean, the great thing about anybody with a pencil and a pen or whatever, a piece of paper, you draw the Enterprise, just, you know, a circle and three sticks basically, and that's what's great about it, because it is very, you know, but it is obviously a lot more than that. There's there's a lot more that goes into it than that, but the reality is the simplicity of it. So yeah, it looks simple, but the motion picture miniature has a lot of detail, and there was a lot of detail on it that I didn't even know was there until I looked at the real miniature. You're looking, you're looking closer and closer and closer, and you're seeing more and more detail. And so we didn't replicate every single bit because it was only going to be for DVD, and we only had so much time. But did put a lot of detail in that that I didn't even know was there. So no, we had a lot of fun working.
I was trying to look for a picture of the Enterprise quickly, but I couldn't find it in time. But speaking of details, that's why I was looking away for a few seconds. Speaking of details, we're back to our good friend Nurnie, which our good friend Philip Nelson told us.
Phil's here. Hi, Phil.
When he was here, that Ron was the one who came up with it to describe embellishments to take details of models that have no real use. Did you feel so inclined to add in some Nurnies?
Well, not on the motion picture, not really, because because we were replicating a miniature that was already built, and the miniature did have Nurnies on it. There are Nurnies on the miniature. There's not an awful lot on the Enterprise because it is quite slick, but there definitely are some. But no, I mean, I live and breathe Nurnies basically, because I built a lot, or at least I did there, and I was building a lot of spaceships, and so. Battlestar Galactica, the new Battlestar Galactica, is nurnie-central. If you look at the actual ships, if you look at the Galactica, if you look at the ragtag fleet, they are covered in
wonder
nurnies.
if I've got a picture of. I only have the poster. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Right.
I don't have the.
No worries.
I was hoping I did.
But speaking of nurnies, I mean, on the new Galactica, one of the things, because my initial job on the miniseries, my main job was basically creating all of the, well, not creating, managing and supervising the creation of all the digital assets for that. And so one of the things that I did was to create a library of digital nurnies. So what we did was we basically built, so a nurnie is essentially like a digital thing. So what we did was I wanted the miniatures or the models for the new Galactica to at least try to be a little more miniature looking. And I was like, well, why does a miniature look like a miniature and why does a CG look like? And one of the main things is that the CGI model is often too slick, too smooth, too doesn't have those kind of rough edges that a miniature has. A miniature, that there are certain rough edges to it, and that kind of makes it look believable. So one of the things I was thinking about was, well, if we basically build the model kit parts, we take some, because what nurnies are called greebles on miniatures, and effectively they will buy a model kit and take all the pieces, whether it's an engine block or a piece off of a ship or the cockpit of an aircraft or whatever. These pieces that just have sort of noise, they have shapes and stuff like that, and they put them onto a miniature and a whole bunch of them. And what it is, it's just to make, if you've got like a spaceship engine, you want it to look like it's got some functions and parts and whatever. So I always use the Millennium Falcon as an example. This process goes back actually to the 60s. In fact, it goes back to Gerry Anderson's kind of era.
I think I do have a picky of your, if I can find it. Where is it? Hold on a second.
It's okay. So what the idea with the new Galactica was to build, basically to use essentially the
yes, I did take a screenshot of your model of the Millennium Falcon, so it's it's displaying right now.
Oh, okay. I'll wait till it pops up on the YouTube feed. So because I'm a bit delayed. Anyway, it's going to go all the way over there and come all the way back. Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Millennium that's the original Falcon.
Yeah, that's mine. Yeah. So
I'm having trouble with my M's and my N's this evening. I'm not quite sure what it is. So
this is a replica. Yeah, this is a replica. So basically, all those little detaily bits, especially around the engine, those are all tanks and wheels off of things and bits off of battleships and different parts and stuff, and they're all stuck together, and when it's all glued together like it is there, you see all these different colors, and all the different colors just mean different kits that stuff have come from. Once you actually paint that over with primer, suddenly all those bits kind of come together and they form this sort of, it just looks like it does something. The idea is it's meant to look like it does something. So it's generally called, greebles as a model kit thing, or widgets sometimes. There's different names. But Ron came up with the idea of he wanted a digital name, so he came up with Nurnie. So that's where Nurnie comes from. Nurnie's the same thing, but it's a digital version. So for the new Galactica, I wanted to try and make them look a bit like, try to get back to miniature look. Yeah. So what I did was a lot of these same model kit parts, we made digital versions of them. And so there was like a little kit of like 100 digital pieces, just these pieces that had a little shape and detail on them. And those were given to all of the model makers, or the digital model makers, and those parts were then used to actually detail the digital models on the new Galactica. So we tried to replicate the look of the miniature feel.
Did you create function libraries? As in these equipment that destroy things or whatever, So.
Well,
or these are purely decorative, or these are transportation devices or whatever. Or do you just throw them?
Yeah, not as far as the pieces. I mean, it
Mm.
was up to me or whoever was the one that was out putting them on to put them on as they sort of saw fit,
So they
and
had no specific meanings then, no
not
specific
really.
function.
But there might have been. I might have said, well, look, this area of the ship does this, or this area of the
Oh.
ship does that. You know that. But the reality is, you know, hopefully the people that I was working with me on it, you know, they knew what needed to, you know, how things worked, as it
Mm.
were. Um, and obviously part of my job was to make sure that everything kind of fit together into the universe and
Mm.
looked, you know, fit in with the feel of it. So I might say, well, look, add some more over here, or maybe make that bit smaller, or move that over there, or let's get rid of that. Or let's add some, you know. Usually it was kind of like add some more over here, add some more over here, just to, you know, make it look a little bit busier and stuff like that.
So when you're supervising that kind of stuff, you are basically applying aesthetics then more than anything
Yeah.
else.
Well, there is, you know,
Because you're not building a real spaceship, so that you don't have to worry
right.
about what functions as what. You're more interested in the way it
Well,
looks.
yes and no. It is a balance, and Galactica is a good example of that because, you know, the Galactica is effectively an aircraft carrier and a battleship. And so the thing is you look at real life aircraft carriers, you look at real life battleships, and you kind of look at, well, you know, I mean, when I was designing where, like I said, that there's what we call the big guns. There are
Yeah.
these big cannons that are on there. I mean, I did actually kind of look at it and go, well, where would they go? Where would they? What would be their angle that they could look at and they could fire at?
Yeah.
Where would be a vulnerable part where maybe they weren't covered, and can we, you know? So I
Yeah.
did, you know, that's not really part of my job, but it is because you're building this stuff. You're sort of involved with the design process of it,
Yeah.
and so I did think about, well, this is a battleship. Where would I put this or this or this? So,
Mm.
you know, there are a lot of places, of course, where you go, just put some stuff in there to make it look busy.
Mm.
But there was, you know, it's like, well, where do the thrusters go?
Mm.
Where does the radar antennas go? Where are the, you know, I did think about that for sure, and a lot of times we do think about that stuff because
Mm.
we are part of, again, we're part of the process, we're part of the
Mm.
storytelling, and
So do you then draw up blueprints for every object that you have to create? Because if you have to hand it over, if you have to pass the work down to
yeah,
the next person, how do they
it's
then decipher what you've done and how to then proceed from there?
it really depends on the time and the budget. I mean, a lot of
Ah,
times I might have a, you know, I might just draw something out really basic, or I might just
ah,
assemble a bunch of photos, you know,
ah,
of say, okay, here's a bunch of photos from an aircraft carrier. Okay, well, here's the landing deck, here's the lights, here's the this, here's the that, here's the
yeah.
walkway, and kind of go, okay, you know, we need this here, and we need this here, and we need this here. But take some ideas from this, and we'd assemble like a folder with photo reference or sketches or whatever.
Mm,
Sometimes if we have a art department, it depends. You know, again, what do we have? Do we have an art department? Do we have a concept department? Do we have
I see.
you
Yeah.
know? And I, you know, so I might go to somebody who's one of the art department and say, okay, well, we need to design this. Okay, you know, and they would maybe just, you know, would do some quick sketches and then kind of go, okay, I like that one, and that one. Okay, let's develop that a bit further and put in
Mm,
some more detail. And then we show those three designs to the director or something, and then they goes, yeah, I want that one. Okay, or so it
mm,
does vary. It varies from the production. And one of the fun parts for me, you know, there's always a thing between TV and film. You know, film always has the time and the money, but you end up kind of being a smaller cog in the machine. Whereas on
mm,
TV, especially when you're, you know, on shows like, you know, Galactica, Firefly, things like this,
mm,
where you get to, you know, you get to be more, you have a bit more involvement in what actually gets on screen, and you might just
mm,
come up with an idea and throw something out. I mean, a good example was on Firefly. So one of the last episodes of Firefly, um, which was a very short-lived series, 15 episodes, one of the last episodes was set in an ice planet. Okay, um, and that actually came about because one of the guys who was working on the team, Kyle Taucher, was playing around with some terrain software. that created different terrains, and he was playing around with some ice looking, and he did like a sort of a demo of kind of like, here's an ice environment, you know, he just, because we were doing lots of stuff with deserts and, you know, things like that, and I think he was getting a bit fed up of sand. So he just did this demo of, well, here's an ice environment that we could do. And that got sent off to Joss Whedon and Fox, and Joss went, hey, you can do an ice planet. Okay, I'm going to set this next episode on an ice planet. And it literally came about because he sort of did this sort of test demo thing and sort of said, hey, we can do this. So it's always good when you get to have that kind of involvement, which doesn't happen all the time. But it happens a bit more on TV. On TV, you're a little bit, it's a smaller team, it's a more adaptable, it's a lower budget, and you get to be a bit more involved. Yeah. So that's one of the reasons why I'm working on a film right now, actually, but actually most of what I've worked on has been TV projects. And one of the reasons is because you are in a smaller team, you've got less resources, they're a bit more challenging, you get to be a little bit more hands-on, a little bit more involved in what's going on.
So I'm going to show a poster of Firefly that Lee has just been talking about. And also I wanted to say to Captain Bob that I will pose Lee that question later on because it's about his future. But if everyone or anyone has questions, please put them in the live chat so that I can present them to Lee at an appropriate time. But here's a poster of Firefly, and this was when you moved over to Zoic Studios.
Yes.
And it seems from what I read that you and the team got a Primetime Emmy Award on the Serenity episode for Outstanding VFX for a series on Firefly. Congratulations. That was a while ago, but still.
It was a while ago now. It seems, to be honest, it seems like yesterday. It really does. It's scarily rapidly approaching 20 years, which is kind of mind-blowing, actually. It's where did 20 years go? But yeah.
Do you remember who you were up against for that award?
Oh, well, the interesting thing with Firefly, so it was Emil Smith was actually the one who was first on the project, and then he basically essentially recruited everybody from Foundation who was available. So, but the thing was actually is a bunch of the Foundation was still doing Enterprise, the newer Star Trek show. So I know that we were. I'll be honest. I'd have to look at the nominations. I don't remember who we were up against, but I think we were up against Enterprise. So it was interesting that we were sort of up against our own teammates. But I think they'd won it the year before, if I recall. So it wasn't like it, we weren't directly, we wouldn't kind of go that way. But
how did you end up moving across to Zoic?
Well, this was the period when Foundation was actually kind of winding up and was having trouble, and so a lot of us were laid off, and they really only had the Enterprise project was pretty much the only thing they had left. So I was actually working on another project with them called Superfire, which was a movie of the week. TV movie of the week thing. I think it was for ABC. And after that was finished, I ended up, that was when I left Foundation because, as I say, Foundation was going through some trouble at that time and was just not getting in. And it wasn't necessarily completely, basically it was post 9/11. So what happened was it was in that period when 9/11 happened. Obviously it affected everything. But one of the things that it did affect was film production, because what happened was anything that involved sort of disasters and blowing things up and explosions and any war and whatever was cancelled, was like scrapped. It was like nobody wanted anything for, and of course that involves a lot of visual effects, because that's what we do. We blow things up and and so all those projects, it was all puppies and kittens, after 9/11 for a period. And there was another version of Battlestar Galactica that was in production, was actually in development, they were building sets, and there's a whole story about, we were sort of involved with, or trying to be involved with that earlier Battlestar. And that kind of led us to be involved with the new Battlestar.
Okay.
So when I was at Foundation, I was actually actively involved with trying to get them to be doing the VFX on the new Battlestar. And there was a lot of projects in the works. Foundation was looking at producing their own content as well. And then, 9/11 happened, and a lot of places, as I say, it caused it's not the same as the whole COVID thing, but that's sort of had a similar effect, where a lot of things just kind of got put on hold. And the trouble is, a lot of companies went under, so yeah. So I moved off from Foundation and then got recruited by Zoic to work on Firefly, and a bunch of the other Foundation people that were also out of work at that point were brought in as well. So yeah, so it was.
So you were telling me in our previous conversation that several of these sci-fi projects were actually executed across over in the UK instead of being created in the US. Something to that effect.
Oh no! Well, what I was talking about was when I was a kid, when I was sort of learning about, production or movie making or whatever. It's when you suddenly realize that, wait, Star Wars was made in, England, and you kind of go, wait, how does that happen? And then you find out things like, Raiders of the Lost Ark was made in England, and 2001: A Space Odyssey was made in England, and Superman was made in England.
Oh, the very first one.
All of them.
All of them?
All of them. Wow. Yeah. All four of them. Yeah. I mean, obviously they filmed stuff in Manhattan or whatever, but all the studio stuff and all that was in the UK, and you kind of go. So that's again one of those things you learn about with movie making, is what you're seeing is not what you think you're seeing, and that applies as much today as it did, whenever. So there was a lot going on. But as I say, when I was sort of leaving high school, and actually when I left high school, I was actually looking at going into the Air Force, but I was still interested in filmmaking, at that point, but that didn't work out. And but as I say, in the late, I'm going to say the last big thing that happened for a while was probably the first Batman, '89.
Oh yeah, that's the one with
Michael Keaton.
Michael Keaton, I watched that one.
That was made in England. That was made at Pinewood Studios, But it seemed like there was a period after that when the British film industry kind of went downhill, and that's I ended up moving to the States and getting work. Now the British film industry is doing bigger than it ever did before,
So let's move on to another great movie. I watched it last night. I loved it. I love the satire. I love how hysterical it is, and it's just everything. I have to say, the CG is really good, and you could really tell, comparing it to the costumery. The costumes didn't look so great compared to the CG. Stuff.
Okay, which project are you talking about?
I'm talking about Iron Sky. Sorry.
Oh, Iron Sky. I wasn't sure which one we'd got onto.
So I'm going to show a quick clip of several scenes that I captured and edited together. There again, no sound because.
Okay, I'm not, because I unfortunately for those but over there, I can't see what you're seeing initially. So so there's a little bit of a delay because there we go. Oh yes, on the moon. Yeah. So actually, most of what you're seeing here of the lunar module, there was literally just a leg and a piece of dirt, a section of soundstage that had some moon rocks and whatever, and then everything that you're seeing in the background, as I say, most of the ship, obviously all the sky was all CG, and there was only a team. So Iron Sky was one of these weird projects that didn't have a lot of money. It didn't have a lot of people. The effects team was less than 20 people for the whole movie.
Wow.
And I think the entire budget for the visual effects was about $500,000, which isn't very much at all. But it was one of those sort of things. It was a goofy, fun project, and I'd heard about it years before, actually, because Samuli, who I'm working with him again. So he hired me to work on that. I've now hired him to work on this film that I'm currently working on. Because that's what you do.
Yes. Same with the music industry.
Yeah. So there was this demo that he had done several years beforehand with this motorcycle driving across the moon with a guy on like a German bike with a sidecar, driving across the moon to this Nazi moon base. And everyone's just like, Nazis on the moon. I mean, that's just, it's so silly, so goofy, but you're like, that could be interesting, Nazis in UFOs, flying out of a secret moon base. It's like, it's what B movies are made for, really. So
for those of you who don't know the plot behind Iron Sky, I'll just read you a quick blurb. The Nazis set up a secret base on the dark side of the moon in 1945, after World War II, obviously, where they hide out and plan to return to power in 2018.
Yep. And then well, basically what happens is that the US returns to the moon and discovers their secret moon base, basically, and so they kind of use that as their trigger to return to Earth, as it were, to make their invasion back to Earth. And they've amassed this armada of it's got a very sort of steampunky kind of feel to it. It was kind of taking the whole 1945 technology and just sort of extrapolating it out with a bit of a,
Was it all CG or any miniatures or model making involved?
No, unfortunately, there was no miniatures on that. We did actually talk about making a miniature of the Götterdämmerung, which is the big spaceship at the end that ends up crashing back into the moon.
Yeah.
And we were trying to figure out how to crash it back into the moon. And make it look good, and we did talk about possibly building a miniature of that and crashing it at high speed, into some dirt, basically, to kind of get this. But we ended up doing it digitally now. And again, it was one of those things you just didn't have the time, the money, or the resources, or the people in order to build miniatures. So no, it was all digital. But it was a really fun project to work on. It was one of those projects where you didn't. Well, most of us, we didn't really look at the clock. We just sort of worked until we got tired, and we went home and slept, and then we came back, and we had a kitchen, in the studio. The studio was actually in an old bank building. Yeah, and the weird thing is actually half of our render farm. When you see banks and they have the big safe door with the big. It's kind of like you see in a movie or whatever. Well, you never get to see that in your local bank. They probably still have them, but. So this building had a safe, that had this huge big metal door. And of course, the safe was on the safe, but that's where our render farm was in the safe. Well, where do we put it? So they had this huge door, and that was where the render farm was.
So you were CG supervisor on this, but were you animating as well? Were you kind of like do it all? You did it all.
No. Well, Samuli was the VFX supervisor, and he was the one that was over in charge. And we had the comm supervisor, and there was 3 or 4 of us that were sort of overseeing. My responsibility on that was essentially overseeing the moon stuff on the moon, or over the moon, I should say. So the moon environment, I should say, that was sort of my area that I worked on. So all the stuff that takes place, apart from I did one shot. That was Earth-based, which was the one of the Statue of Liberty getting blown up. And that was more just because it was sort of a standalone shot, and we didn't have actually enough stuff to do on the moon at that point. So it was, I just, so yes, and that was a show where, as I say, it was a very small team, and nearly everybody on that was generalists. So we were modeling, we were texturing, we were lighting, we were doing effects, we were rendering stuff out. They had a separate comp team that was doing all the comp work and did amazing, especially for, the resources. But that was also, as I say, it was one of those shows that was a mix of different software and different people, and it was just finding the right team. But it really actually highlighted that, a lot of people ask me when they're trying to get into CG, it's like, what software do I need to learn? And it really doesn't come down to that. It's more about, what you kind of can do with the software. And so on Iron Sky, we had Max, 3D Studio Max, we had Softimage, we had Maya, we had Lightwave, we had Fusion, we had Nuke. I think we had Combustion, After Effects. I mean, it was basically, it was whatever anybody could use and whatever was needed to get the job done. It really didn't come, it was complete. And I mean, when I was working on the Statue of Liberty shots, I was using Lightwave to light and render it, but the actual the Statue of Liberty model was being built by another guy, one of the modeler guys, and I think he was using Max or something else, and then at one point it went over to our map painter guy, and he was using Nuke, I think, or but it was one of those things where files were going backwards and forwards from different people, and it didn't really matter. It's points and pixels and polygons and whatever, it's all what you kind of make it in and bring it all together, and it didn't really matter. So, but it was a really good example of a group working together to come out with, to reach the goal, and using whatever we had available and whatever, really to get it done as quickly and as fast and as affordable as possible, because there wasn't a lot of resources.
That's interesting. In music, because everything's digital, you can basically do something in, let's say, track something in one DAW and export it and import it into another DAW, and it would sound the same. Is that the same thing with CG, that all the packages don't somewhat stylize the look, where you can tell this doesn't look like that one that was rendered in that?
I mean, really, it sort of depends. Again, it's more about how you use it and what you do. Okay. I do have an image somewhere that when I do talks about, I have a slideshow that I did for talking about Iron Sky, and I did actually show that lunar lander, the lander that lands at the very beginning of the film. The half of the shots for that were done in Maya, and half of the shots were done in Lightwave. And I converted the model from Maya over to Lightwave just because that's what I was using, and that other team. And so, but it didn't matter. And I actually have a render where I actually have, this is the Maya model, this is the Lightwave model, and they're right next to each other. Yeah. And then I put it up on the screen, and I go, look, this is one piece of software, this is another piece of software, and the two are basically identical. There's some, if you look really close, you can see some little differences, but the reality is they both look the same. So, moving stuff from package to package has got easier. There's various pieces of software now that allow you to move. And you can move animation from one to another. You can move textures from one to another. If something's UV mapped, you can move the models back and forth. So it's, yes, different pieces of software have different, advantages and specialities and whatever, but it's not necessarily, again, I get asked a lot by people who are trying to get into the industry, what software do I need to learn? And I always tell them the actual opposite, and it usually confuses them. I usually actually say, don't concentrate initially on the piece of software that you're learning, because again, it could change. Rendering software, right now, if anybody said to me, what software do I learn? I'd say learn Unreal. If you'd asked me a couple of years ago, I would have said learn V-Ray. If you'd asked me, learn Redshift, or learn RenderMan, or learn Mental Ray, or learn, it changes, because they're just, it's like what I'm talking about with the virtual production or with augmented reality. They're tools. They're tools.
That's the same with the music industry as well. You teach concepts. You don't teach how to use a particular program, because when there are updates, first of all, and what if you don't have that particular piece of software, you have to use another one. It's got similar functions, but do you understand it to be able to transfer your skills? So I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. So, it's like, if you're I don't know, I'm not very musical, but if you're learning music, you don't kind of go, well, I can play this guitar, this one acoustic guitar. That's the only acoustic guitar I know how to play. And then somebody says, well, okay, now I need you to play the banjo or something. Can you go, oh, well, I only know how to play this, But if you understand, you should be able to, I'm sure, obviously you're not going to suddenly become a concert pianist if you know how to play the guitar. But
you're not?
I don't think so. I don't know.
There goes my dreams.
But I encourage people to learn about the fundamentals of imagery and of filmmaking. So I'm like, learn lighting, learn about photography. If you're learning animation, learn about all the different types of animation, learn about how things move, learn about sculpture, learn about painting, learn about how colors, get mixed together to create other colors, and then how those colors are changed by putting a light on them, and how a different color light changes the color of a different, type of paint, which then goes through a camera lens and gets changed again. So it's sort of understanding how things work in reality is what is more important, because you're replicating those in the computer. So just because the computer is still just a tool, and it's got to work with everything else. And there are too many people, I think, that get a bit focused on the technical side of things and the IT side of things. And, I did at a certain period, but at another period, you kind of go, no, you should just sort of concentrate on start with all the basics or the fundamentals, and then kind of build on that.
I think there are too many people out there who, as you say, focus on what they need to have.
Yeah.
But if you don't have, that's when you stretch.
Right.
Your imagination has to stretch, and you have to be resourceful.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I will answer Captain Bob's question in a second, but Dominique said he agreed with you. He said, that is the difference between basics and fundamentals. And I'll just flash it on the screen, what Dominique has to say. Software is basic. Fundamentals is more the understanding of aesthetics, color theory, and so on and so forth. Yeah, very much you can transfer this concept learning versus learning a piece of software to the music industry as well, where everything has gone digital. Needing to understand concepts and how you get things done rather than how do you work a piece of software is the way to go. That's the only way to go, really.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not musical, but I kind of liken it. I remember, especially in sort of the early 80s when Casio synthesizers were becoming cheap and you could buy them in the shop, and everybody suddenly thought that they were a musician because there was a button that you could press that suddenly played a rhythm,
Still
and
happening.
And so, again, I can't play any particular instrument, but I wanted to learn how to play the piano or play the keyboard, but I wanted to learn how to actually
do it
the music
properly.
part of it. Yeah. And so I saw a lot of people who suddenly thought that they were musicians, and I'm kind of going, no, you actually need to know how those black and white keys work, not the other ones.
What's interesting about the visual and the music industry, or visual art and music industries, is that we don't really have labels to separate apprentices from someone who's been doing it for a while / professional. I remember teaching, a friend of mine was teaching someone with a guitar, speaking of guitars, and this fella had just started learning, but he would present himself as a guitarist. I'm a guitarist. So how do you discern someone who is still a student of versus someone who's been doing this for a long time when you put them side by side? Because they're both guitarists.
Right.
And in many ways, you think, where's the humility and all of
Yeah. Well, I mean, in a way, it's the same with anything. I mean, if you say, well, I'm a painter, because I have a brush and I have some paint, and I'm a painter.
Exactly.
I'm not Leonardo, but I'm a painter. So. It's sort of the same thing.
Whereas you wouldn't do that if you were in medicine. You wouldn't say, I'm a medical student, not I'm a doctor.
Right. I think life and death's a little bit more important, more critical, I think.
That's unfair.
Yes. But it's the same related, I guess, to when somebody says, well, what piece of software do I need to learn? And I go, well, it doesn't really matter what piece of software you learn. It's what you can do with the piece of software. You need to understand what is it you're trying to do with that piece of software, not necessarily about the piece of software. Because when somebody shows me their demo reel, I'm looking at their demo reel, and I'm not saying what school did you go to, or what software did you use to make this? Now, I may ask them that afterwards because hopefully I want to know what's, but I'm looking at what they've done with it. I might say, well, how did you do this? Or how did you make that? Or what did you do on this? Explain to me the process, show me what you did.
Yeah.
Because I'm more interested in what they can do with,
what they have,
so, okay, giving out, Blender. Blender's a free piece of software. It's free. You buy Maya, it costs thousands of dollars. You buy Blender, it's free. So if somebody shows me something, I don't care whether it's done in Blender or it's done in Maya, whatever it is, because
Lee, I'm going to interrupt you. Something is knocking on your microphone. Or are you hitting your microphone?
No, that was me. I was tapping on the table and I'm doing it subconsciously. So, yeah, sorry.
You're fine. No worries.
My hands are like trying to do things and I'm like,
yeah,
okay.
I think I'm like you. We're both Italians in disguise. We want to gesture, but we can't.
No, I'm trying to keep my hands stop waving them around. Yes. So.
It's okay. I'm cool. I just want to make sure that something else wasn't hitting your microphone.
I can't hear it. So yeah.
No
sorry.
worries.
Yeah. So anyway, what about Bob's question? I'm sure.
Bob's question was about your future, and I didn't want to jump to your future so soon. But all right, I have a few more questions, but let's look at Bob's question then. He wants to know what projects are on the horizon for you, and if you remain in Great Britain or head back to Singapore.
I will be back to Singapore soon. I'm sort of based there. I'm actually in the UK, not technically for work. I'm sort of half here for work, but I'm here for other reasons. So I'm trying to learn how to. I'm trying to get my pilot's license. That's why I'm actually in the UK, and that's a whole nother multiple chapters in my life. But that's a whole nother story. So the reality is, my projects take me all over the world, and they have. And it's been great, actually. That's how I got to Singapore. So. Yes, the current project that I'm working on is, I can't say too much about it, but it's a film that's actually based out of Los Angeles. It was filmed last year in Prague.
Wow.
It's not a sci-fi. It's sort of fantasy type of thing. But we have the post-productions being done in the US, in Finland, with the guys who did Iron Sky, and in Malaysia with guys I worked with last year. So it's a worldwide thing, and I'm just sort of keeping that all in order. My next project will be filmed in Indonesia and Singapore, and again, I'm not going to say what it is, but it's last year I did 2 series for Netflix, one in Thailand, one in Malaysia. They were the first 2 purely done by Netflix Asia projects that involved a lot of VFX. And one was called The Ghost bride, one was called Stranded.
I do have a couple of pics of The Ghost bride, so I'll bring them
okay. All right. And so anyway, I'm doing another show for Netflix in Indonesia next year. It's actually a kids show. It's a live-action kids show, 13 episodes. And that's been delayed because of COVID. So we were actually meant to film that in June. And at this point, we would have been heavily into post-production and almost finished. So, there's the Ghost Bride. Yes, that's the banner. So, and so that got delayed. And it got delayed until September, and then got delayed until more, and then got delayed until January. And now it's looking like we'll actually start filming it probably in March. So yeah. Kid show for Netflix. It's been done in English, so it's actually aimed at worldwide. And I'll let them announce what it's actually called and whatever. But as soon as I can tell you, I will. But that's going to be filmed, as I say, in it's a Singapore production, but it's actually being filmed in Indonesia. But it's in English, so it's aimed at the worldwide market. So that's my next project.
I'm curious, when it's a Singapore production, are these private investors or is it a government project?
This is Netflix. No, this is
Netflix.
You
said Netflix? I'm sorry, I missed that.
Yes, this is for Netflix.
Beg your pardon.
So Netflix Asia, so Netflix has 3 kind of global headquarters, as it were. So they have Los Angeles, of course. I believe it's Amsterdam is their European hub, and Singapore is actually their Asia Pacific hub, APAC as they call it. And so obviously most of Netflix production is done in the US. Quite a bit now is being done in the UK and in Europe. There's a lot of stuff being done all over Europe, actually, which is coming out of the Amsterdam office. I think it's Amsterdam. Don't quote me on that. And they basically are wanting to expand production in Asia, not just for the Asian market, but for what, I mean, they produce stuff obviously that is for the local markets, but they're trying to produce it so that it's worldwide as well. So, for example, The Ghost Bride and Stranded both had English dubbed versions. So there is the original language Thai or Mandarin. For The Ghost Bride, but then they have subtitles. I recommend watching it with subtitles because then again you're getting the actual actors' voices and it does sound better. But there is and it's weird actually because The Stranded, which is the Thai show, was dubbed into what I want to say is American English. So they used American voiceovers, and The Ghost Bride, which is the Mandarin one, they used British voiceover actors. So it's interesting because they both sound completely different. So one, the Stranded sounds kind of like an American teenage high school kind of show in the English version, and
I wonder if it's because of the colonial tie.
Could be, yeah. I'm not sure exactly. That's not my department, so I'm really not sure. But they also have dubbed it into multiple. They do a lot of dubbing into multiple languages. So I don't know how many languages. All of them have been, translated into, whether it's subtitles or actual voice dubbing. But they, Netflix's aim is to, make their stuff available to as many people as possible. So I don't work for Netflix; I work for Netflix. So I'm not trying to promote them, but it's interesting. So yeah, they have their Asia Pacific hub is in Singapore. And so that's where the productions are being done. And they're obviously, they were actually expanding very rapidly last year. And then obviously COVID put a complete dampener on everything and everything sort of ground to a halt. But they're doing a lot of shows in India and Korea and Japan and some stuff in Southeast Asia. So, yeah.
I want to show a screenshot from The Ghost Bride where you actually went back to your first skill / first love, which was miniature building.
Oh, okay.
And it's of the Netherworld mansion.
Yes.
So I took my phone and did a screenshot with it because you can't screenshot Netflix frames. It doesn't. They don't let you do that. So that's why it looks a little rough. But sorry, a little. So
it's a screenshot of a screenshot. Yes. I should have sent you some. I meant to send you some pictures of that one actually on the set. So so this was a miniature. It wasn't too small. And what's interesting about this miniature now is it's actually in the Netflix office in Singapore.
Oh wow!
It's on display there because that's one of the things that's an advantage of miniatures or whatever props and models and stuff. Over CGI. I'm not. The great thing is if you go to ILM, they have a whole kind of gallery of some of their miniatures and models and stuff and props and things that they've built on display. But they don't have a gallery of all their digital stuff because you can't really do that, other than having a screen. So,
what's the footprint of this mansion? Was it large, small, 1 foot?
No,
2
it's
feet?
about. I'm trying to visualize it. It's
1 meter.
Yeah, it's about 2 meters wide.
2 meters. Wow, that's fairly large.
Yeah, it was pretty big.
Ah, it's fairly large.
Yeah, it's pretty big. And then it was on a little bit of a hilltop, and those trees are actually just little. They're actually real, but they're just branches that were broken off of bigger trees and then put in. Yeah. So they're meant to look like dead trees.
And the lights, are they CG'd or?
No, there was practical lights inside the miniature. Wow. The only thing we did was to change the color. So there was some color change. Because what it was the lights on the actual miniature were blue, and there was a green screen behind it. So the sky is CG and stuff like that. But what it was in the netherworld, it has this kind of blue hue to everything, so everything's kind of blue. And what it was when we had the blue windows on the mansion, it kind of made it look like it was transparent, like we were seeing, like there wasn't any depth to it, like it was a facade, like it was just a flat, So what we did was change the colors of the lights, and that's something you can do in CG. That's, as I say, it's something that's quite easy to do. So basically, we just changed the colors of the window lights to be kind of a warmer, like lights, like the other thing that we did do with the lights, and again, this stuff we can do afterwards, is really great in digital, is to actually flicker. So if you actually look at the lights, there's like because on the set, on the location, not the sets, there was no locations for the mansion. There was sort of fire. They had like, the lights were meant to be fire burning. So they had the kind of orangey flickering kind of movement. So we added that sort of flickering life to the windows just to tie it in with the inside and outside. Yeah.
How about those boulders? Are they real pieces of?
No, that boulder that's on the sort of the left side of the screen is just a rock about that big.
Okay. So they're real objects then.
Yeah, and actually, what it is the dirt that is sort of around the miniature that's meant to look like the Earth.
Yeah.
So on the Ghost Bride, we had a soundstage. It was a huge green screen. It was a whole soundstage. It was green screen all around, and it was meant to be the netherworld environment. And so they had I don't know what they actually used, but they brought in truckloads of dirt basically to just cover the ground, because it was meant to be the sort of kind of dead, barren, dead trees and dead bodies and just dirt on the ground. And so what I can't remember who actually did it now, but one of the property guys, the props people, they basically there was a couple of guys sitting there for about an hour with a sieve. And they were sieving some of the dirt from the actual set, and just sieving out the really, really, really fine, like sand from it.
See.
And then we use that same dirt on the miniature. So the dirt that's actually on the miniature is the same dirt that was on the set for the ground.
Wow.
So we got the color and the texture and all the same, but we just had to sieve out all the big pieces, otherwise it loses scale. So,
wow. That's a lot of work.
Yeah, but it was actually quite quick. We actually filmed this quite quickly. Yeah. So it was maybe an hour or two, and all the shots were done.
Oh, right.
Yeah. And what's interesting is the green screen that's behind it is just the green screen that was the same green screen that all the other stuff was shot against. We just set it up in the corner of the soundstage. And then Eric, the DP, he lit it, and yeah. So and this was the post work for this was done by a company called Fly Studio in Malaysia, and I'm working with them on the next project as well. So
I see. So it looks like you're a VFX supervisor on this series. Were you also a generalist? Did you have to animate?
No,
managed?
Unfortunately, I was just the supervisor for that one. So I did actually do a couple of shots, but they were just, what it was there was some fixes that we had to do afterwards. It was sort of late in production, and editorial sort of spotted an error. And so I just did those at home, but those are really the only shots that I worked on. I did do and again, it's the same on the Stranded. I did do some elements for a few shots, like some bits, but yeah, that's actually one of the things that kind of sucks about being a supervisor, is that, you get to do a lot more stuff and you get to be involved with a lot more, but you don't quite get to be as much involved with the actual day-to-day of doing the actual shots. You do a little bit, and you try to, kind of, but, because you do kind of want to still keep your hands on, but you end up being more of the, you're the one overall, yes. So
you're telling me that initially the mansion was going to be a CG item?
No, actually, originally it was they were no. Oh. It was possibly going to be, but originally they were looking at building the entrance as a physical set.
Oh, all right.
The doorway and whatever, that kind of piece in the middle. We were going to build that as a physical set piece.
Got it.
And then would do the rest of it as a CG model.
Okay.
And there was discussion with the art department and the production designer, and he actually said, well, how about we build it as a model? And I said yes, and that was it. Immediately I just went yes.
And I'll do it.
No. Well, it was the art department that actually did. Yes, it was the art department who actually, and so they designed it up, and then it was actually made out of wood mostly.
Wow.
That was actually cut on a laser cutter. So it's model making, but there's a lot where you've got pretty advanced CNCs. We've got laser cutters. We've got 3D printers now. So a lot of these advanced tools can still be used for model making. So yeah, and that all kind of ties in with what we do as well. So you can design a prop that gets used as the CG version, but if you want to actually have the physical one that the character's using, you can print it out and then paint it up, and so you have a digital one and a real life one.
So in all your years of model making, what has been the most popular item to need a model made of? Spaceships or not?
Well, spaceships is what I got into this to do. That's that. So I gravitate mostly towards, those sort of things. Spaceships and stuff, because that's what I first saw as a kid when I saw Thunderbirds. Those are not necessarily spaceships, but exotic ships and spaceships. And then, Space 1999, those were spaceships. So I kind of gravitated in that field towards vehicles and spaceships and things like that. But
I'm kind of curious, what kind of materials do you typically use?
Right.
Plastic?
Everything, actually. Seriously, it doesn't matter. It is everything. So it's everything from wood, metal, plastic, acrylic, and there's laser cut parts. There's 3D printed parts.
Right.
But one of the things that the hobby that I have is called studio scale replicas, and it's building replicas of the studio miniatures. And so one of the things that we try to do with that is to actually replicate the methodology that was used to build the originals. So when we're talking about kit bashing and using those pieces from model kits, I have and my wife will be rolling her eyes because I have a massive storeroom that is literally filled with old model kits that all have pieces missing from those model kits because those pieces have been taken off and used to build whatever vehicle it is that I'm making a replica of. So a lot of those details are, the idea is to find the same pieces that were used on the original and replicate it. It's the same way as, when somebody's trying to make a replica prop. They'll often try to find the original pieces that were used to make the replica prop. And that can be everything from being a decommissioned gun to, one of the most famous ones are the lightsabers from Star Wars, from the first Star Wars. Like Darth Vader's, lightsaber is actually, it's a flashbulb holder. So I don't know if you remember the old, okay, you won't remember it, but you've probably seen pictures. The old cameras, the big cameras, and you'd see, and they would hold them with
Hasselblad?
2 hands.
No.
And they would have, when they had a flash.
Oh, before Hasselblad.
Yeah. But remember.
Yeah.
Right. So, but when they had a flash, it wasn't like a little battery thing that we have now. Yeah. It was a large disc about this big, and it had a big handle that had a bunch of batteries in it, and they'd screw in a flash, and then they'd like poof, and they'd take a picture, and then they'd have to unscrew it and put in another one because it only lasted one time. Well, the thing that they were holding held the batteries. It looked like a flashlight, but it had batteries in it, and a button that you press. That is actually what a lightsaber is. It's that battery holder. Is actually. That's what, so props, can be made. Props are like making miniatures. They scavenge, especially when it's sci-fi related, and you want to make something that looks a bit weird. You scavenge things from all over the place and junk and stuff like that. And So yeah, so when I build the miniatures, when I say it's everything, it really is everything. I mean, one of the miniatures that I'm building from Space 1999, which is one of the shows that I watched as a kid, I'm building some replica miniatures. And one of the model makers, he actually used wedding cake. You know when you have a wedding cake and it's
those
got
pillars?
the pillars, you know, like the look like kind of like
I've seen
rope,
those
pillars.
Yeah, I've used them before.
Right. So those were used as like engines on a spaceship. You know, those pillars.
Yeah.
And so I don't have the original pillars, but a friend of mine, you know, he managed to find some original ones and made castings of them. So
wow.
It's when I say a multitude and it's all sorts of things, it really is a multitude of different bits and pieces that are put together.
That's fascinating. So what's been the weirdest project you've had to tackle?
Oh, weirdest project. I don't know.
Well, the last time we spoke, you mentioned maybe not the weirdest, but
Right. Which one was I talking about?
But at least one with an interesting backstory. You mentioned Lost in Space.
Oh, that one. Yeah. Because we were talking about all sorts of projects. Yeah. So back, it was actually between. Wait, now was it between Firefly and Galactica, or between Galactica miniseries and series? Anyway, back then there was Lost in Space was done back in the 60s. Owen Allen, and then there was a movie that was made, and yeah, I think that's it.
I found that poster.
Wow. Found that poster. Wow, I'm looking over there and I'm going, yeah. So back in the early, a long time ago. Anyway, they were going to make a new Lost in Space series, and so they made a pilot up in Vancouver, and John Woo, Hong Kong action kung fu guy, director, was hired to be the director for a Lost in Space. And we kind of was like, okay, really? John Woo, Lost in Space? Okay, well, maybe it'll be really cool and action-packed and fun. And so we did we got to do the VFX work for that one. And then we actually saw the edit. I can't remember when we saw the edit of the show. And it was pretty rough. It was pretty bad. Because it's kind of more about the kids, and it's sort of it's almost like a teenagers complaining and whining about being taken off into space and all this. And it was pretty, I don't want to say it was boring, but it wasn't quite what we were expecting. Lost in Space really meant to be about the whole family kind of getting through it. Yeah, this was more about the teenage characters complaining all the time.
So it wasn't released at all.
Well, and we're kind of going, why is John Woo doing something with sort of about teenage angst and whatever? So, but yeah, it wasn't picked up. I don't believe it was ever shown anywhere. It is on YouTube. There is a low res, looks like a VHS copy of it on YouTube. If you really want to look it up, I take no responsibility. Now, the thing that's actually funny about the VFX on that, the new show that was done for Netflix, which is really good and is done really well, it's weird actually. There's some elements of the show that we did that I don't know if it was just coincidence or if they saw this pilot. I don't know why they would have, but maybe they did. But there is actually some elements from this show, this pilot, that I think is in the new show, and
such as.
Well, the look of the ship, the design of the Jupiter 2 actually has some similarities, and then the whole thing about how there's this sort of mothership that has dozens of these kind of pod ships that are being transported, and that they break away from that. That was exactly how it was in the John Woo show, which wasn't in the original show and wasn't in the movie. So this was something that was completely different, where it was almost like this transport ship that had these pods that were like the family living quarters or whatever that could separate and land on the planet. And that's how it was in this John Woo one. So as I say, there's just a few elements where I kind of go, weird, but oh well, you know. But what's funny about the John Woo Lost in Space pilot was that there's what was the name of the show? It's like the one about aliens that's on the History Channel, like Ancient Aliens, I think it's called, or Ancient. It's been running for years. It's like a UFO show. It's
Anyone
kind of,
know? Anyone out there remember what it's called?
Ancient Aliens or something. It's with the guy who's got the funky hair, who's kind of got the catchphrase of "It was aliens." It does the hands thing.
I'm sorry.
He's kind of famous for. He's like, I'm not saying it was aliens, but it was aliens. That's kind of it. I can't remember. Anyway, on that show, they use a lot of sort of footage from other things. I guess they buy stock footage. Oh. So what was funny was I just happened to be watching one of these. I don't know, it was on TV or something, and there's a thing where they're talking about aliens coming through a wormhole or something like this, and the footage. I'm like looking at the footage and I go, "That's from the Lost in Space pilot that we did." And I'm watching it, and there's footage of the alien ships and this wormhole thing that we did, which is how they get lost in space, because they go through this wormhole. And the footage that's in this Ancient Aliens thing, or this show, is from the Lost in Space pilot. So I thought that was kind of funny. So somebody on the production chopped out all the VFX footage, uploaded it to some stock footage website where you can pay and download it. So somewhere, I have no idea which library it's in, but the footage that we did is on a library somewhere, because it was purchased by this other show we used. So
maybe they had to recoup their investment.
Wow, I don't think they made much by selling it. So
question about the poster: is that robot?
Yes, that's the robot in the back.
Wow.
Yes, and it was really cheesy looking, because it was meant to be designed and built by the young kid, by Will. So they made it really, really cheesy looking to make it look like it was designed by the kid. So, yeah.
Well, our friend Daniel Katzenberger says that history program you talked about was Wolfenstein 2. Apparently, according to Google. No,
it's not that. It's I'd have to look it up myself. But it's a show. It's a show that they've been on for 10 years. Maybe it's not the History Channel. I don't know why Alien show would be on the History Channel, but I could look it up. Yeah. So, but no, that was a good. It was just the fact that it was John Woo directing this teenage Lost in Space show, which I thought was kind of So that was a wacky one.
There you go. Anyone with questions? Because we are reaching almost the end of our stream. We've kept Lee awake. It's probably past 12 midnight where he is now.
It is, actually. I didn't even realize it's actually 1:45 now already.
Yeah, you had too much coffee.
I had a coffee before. But I had a coffee when we started, and so I'm wide awake now.
I know. Daniel says, I found it. It was called Ancient Aliens.
It is Ancient Aliens. I thought it was something like that. Yes.
Thanks, Daniel.
So, yes. Yeah, that was the show. Yeah. So, I don't know which episode, or maybe it's in multiple episodes. But yeah, there's some footage of like aliens and spaceships coming out of a wormhole and stuff, and that was from this John Woo Lost in Space pilot, which I thought was quite amusing.
What do you know?
Yeah.
So do we have any questions out there? We don't want to keep Lee up much longer. Lee will be back with us in February because there's another chapter to his life, his animation life. 3D animation.
Okay. Yeah,
and I think you did some in the Lucasfilm Star Wars: The Clone Wars that was produced in Singapore, and Gerry Anderson's new Captain Scarlet was 100% 3D animated. So we want to talk about those as well.
Well, that's what I said to you the other day when we were sort of talking about the show. Is like, what do we cover? And I said, well, there's an awful lot to cover, and I've kind of flip-flopped between doing live-action visual effects and doing animated, mostly kid shows. So, and in fact, actually, when I moved to Foundation Imaging, when I started at Foundation Imaging, I was hired to work on Voyager. And actually, the first show I worked on at Foundation Imaging was actually called Roughnecks, the Starship Trooper Chronicles, which was based on the Robert Hyland Starship Troopers book, which was then sort of based on the movie that was done in the late 90s. And so there's this animated Starship Troopers TV series that was produced for Sony, and it's actually quite good. It was meant to be 40 episodes. So that was actually made at Foundation. Most of it, not all of it, most of it was made at Foundation Imaging. And when I actually moved out to California to go work on Star Trek Voyager, and I got out to California and was like, hey, I'm here. And they went, oh, we just went on hiatus. We'll be back in August. And I'm like, yeah, but it's like April, and I just arrived in California, and I've moved here, and I have no money, and it's kind of hard just to sit around. So it turned out that they were working on this animated show called Roughnecks, the Starship Trooper Chronicles, and
it seems that Daniel has it on DVD.
Yes, I have the DVDs too. So basically they. Like all hands on deck, they needed anybody that was available, and so there's a good story about me. I basically, they kind of contacted me and said, but do you want to work on this for a couple of months before you start on Voyager? And so I was like, yes, of course. I sat down and give on my first episode. I think I had 6 weeks to do 2 minutes of the show, which we had to do. We did motion capture because I'm not a character animator. I kind of built spaceships. So and they went, okay, here's your folder with your storyboards. Here's your voice recording folder. Your mocap session is in 2 days.
Wow.
Okay, basically, and here's Mike, who's your supervisor, who really helped. And it was kind of basically like just thrown in the deep end, and that was quite an experience. And learning, I was doing lip sync. I was doing, lighting, effects, motion capture, which I'd never done before. There was a whole bunch of stuff I had never, I built spaceships. That was my thing. Hey, I want to build spaceships. And suddenly I was just thrown in. But it was great. It was really, really good. And I was on that for 2 or 3 months before I then moved back over to Voyager.
Yeah.
And then I've worked on a multitude of other animated projects. And then I also moved, so 3 of them I've been the episodic director. So I moved into actually directing for animated series. So I've been an episodic director on 3 different shows now. And hopefully I can get, to doing more of that again. But, I'm back in the visual effects world right now, so I really like that.
Yeah.
But, and there's actually, if you actually look, there's actually been quite a few visual effects people who have gone into directing. There's actually quite a few. In fact, the most famous is James Cameron. He was an art director and a visual effects guy back in the 80s, and now like the biggest director in the world. But yeah, his background is actually technically art department and visual effects. So he built miniatures and stuff like that. So
Thanks.
But
Lee.
So anyway, we'll save that for another day. We'll talk about anime.
So I just want to make sure there are no more questions out there. I'll wait a few seconds and I'll look through.
Dan says, "Was this working?" Roughnecks was all lightweight. Yeah, that was.
Sorry, Daniel, I didn't see that last one.
I just saw it at the bottom. Yeah. That was 21 years ago. That was, it's crazy. Yeah.
Time flies.
So, I got that. Animation brought me out to Singapore to work on the Clone Wars, Star Wars: The Clone Wars, and that's why I'm back in Singapore, because at the end of that project I met my wife, and that brought me back to Singapore. So.
Hi, Abby. I think Abby's going by her Chinese name here. Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I wasn't sure.
Yes.
Shi Hui.
Yeah.
Hi, Abby.
Yes. If she's still there, I made her get up at like 6:30 on a Sunday morning to tune in.
Thanks so much.
If she's not responding, she's probably asleep.
She could be, But thanks so much for making it bright and early. Thanks, Lee, too. I will create a whole new list for our February guest spot for you.
Oh, okay.
But
All
let
right.
me just see if there are any other things that I wanted to go through with you while I wait a few more seconds for any more questions. Any more
Okay.
questions?
Going once, going twice.
But let's drink to Nurnie one last
The
time.
Nurnies, yes. I'm out of coffee, I'm afraid, which is probably a
I
good thing
have
because it's one.
tea. Oh, yeah, it's
It's
probably a good
1 o'clock.
idea.
So yeah, no, to Ron, who essentially, as I say, I wanted to work for him, and I did, get to work with him, and then I worked with him on multiple other projects. One of which was Gerry Anderson's new Captain Scarlet, which we'll talk about another time.
Yeah.
Because Ron was also heavily influenced by Thunderbirds. That was his background actually.
Oh,
So,
okay.
we both got to work with Gerry Anderson, which was great. I mean, that was that's like working for your idol. So
I know,
yeah.
and I've got plenty of questions for you on that, but I'll ask you in February because, of
Okay.
course, I was a Thunderbirds fan as well.
Yeah.
Daniel says I drink to. Oh no, Dominic says I drink to
Dominic.
Nurnies, greebles, and women in power. Oh,
Women in Power.
yay.
I think that's a nod to what happened a few hours ago.
Oh, ooh,
Yes.
okay. I try not
But we're
to.
not gonna
No,
we're not gonna talk about that.
I
here,
won't
but
cover
yes.
politics.
Yes.
I might
yes.
get
But
in
I think-
trouble.
Yes. No, it's okay. But I think it's it's great that we have a female leader. It's taken too long. It's taken 240 years or whatever it is for the.
Well,
Yeah.
UK's had its fair share.
Yeah. Well,
and
Margaret Thatcher was quite a controversial powerhouse of a female leader, but
yeah, Germany's got it.
yes, exactly. So
and New Zealand.
yeah, and she's done wonderful in New Zealand with the COVID. So why not?
Why
I mean,
not?
there's absolutely no reason why. Yeah, exactly, no reason. But anyway, so yeah, the US has been a bit behind on catching up, but now it's finally there, so that's good.
Wonderful.
So, but we'll avoid politics. Good.
Yes. I think it looks like we might not have any more questions, Lee. So I don't want to keep you up anymore because you are looking a little tired.
Oh. Yes. No. Okay.
No, we shan't tackle those. But thanks, everyone. Dominic, Daniel,
Okay. Thank
Captain Bob.
Bob, and anybody else?
Anybody else who's hiding there, because I can see there are more virtual bodies and people have chimed in on the live chat to say hi.
I wasn't sure if anybody was going to show up today because, as I say, everybody's distracted by other news today.
Yeah, there's a lot happening today. I'm sorry, Lee, but
it's okay.
You get a second chance.
That's why I was just like, let's talk about other things. So yeah.
I enjoyed it. I learned a lot.
Oh, good. Thank you for having me. So,
Thanks, Lee. As I said, everyone, we're going to have Lee back in February, so please look out for him. I think he'll be in Singapore by then, so we'll have our music and chat probably at its regular time then, since he'll be in Singapore, which will be your 9 a.m. and my 7 p.m.
Okay, got it. Okay, got it. Yep. No, that's no problem. Yeah, I certainly hope I'm back in Singapore by February.
Well,
yes,
let us know and stay in touch.
Yep, no problem at all.
Well, Lee, it's been a pleasure having you.
Abby
says wash hands. Wash hands.
Yes.
What? Did I miss something?
I can see the emoji, but I don't know what that means.
Oh,
so.
wash hands and you go.
Oh, okay.
You go. I think it's you go. Like you go. Or something like that. I think so. Thanks, Abby. All right, Lee. Everyone's saying good night and stay safe and stay healthy. Same from me to you.
Everybody.
Stay safe. Take care. And I'll see you soon. But I'll keep in touch via our usual method of messaging in case there's more information I want from you, or I need a poster here or a video clip there, whatever it is for the February episode. But it's been such a joy and pleasure having you on. So insightful, so much knowledge. I love history and I love stories, so you're the perfect guest for that.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Well,
Abby says I thought that was a clap.
oh, okay. Okay.
Okay.
Well, right now, yeah, wash hands is probably
Wash hands. All right,
that is the clap.
everyone. Let's say
Okay.
goodbye to Lee. And Lee,
Okay.
take
Thank you.
care, and I'll see you soon.
Okay. Good night. Thank you,
Bye,
everyone. Okay.
Lee. Sleep
Bye.
well. Bye.
Okay. We'll do.
Okay, that was so fun hearing Lee's stories. I'm a story lover and I love storytelling as well, but I just don't have the breadth and depth of Lee's experience, I suppose. His stories are just totally and utterly mesmerizing, and mine, I hope, get close to those. Anyway, it's been a pleasure having you guys as well. The BBC, because we talked about BBC in today's episode, has been a special place as well for another one of our guests who's appearing in December, who actually made synthesizer history on the UK side. So you got to join me in welcoming him and hearing his stories as well. But for next week, we have Chris Boardman, who is an orchestrator, arranger, conductor, and composer, and an Emmy Award winner. Chris, as I mentioned earlier, did the soundtrack on Nightmare Before Christmas, which Lee mentioned as well. He also worked on The Wolfman, Lethal Weapon 4, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, Spy Kids, etc., etc. I hope you will join me because it's going to be an exciting month or two. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and select notification. It's this bell-like icon after you hit subscribe. That way you'll know when a live stream is on or I've just posted a new video. As I said, I released a new music video just Tuesday. Go check it out. It's on my YouTube channel. And if you feel so inclined, please say a few kind words that I may quote to support the streaming channel. But most of all, please, everyone, take care, stay safe, and I'll see you next week. Bye.